I'm Jerusha Sukhthiarath and you're watching News 24 Live. Now, Piet Geesteen is joining me from Brands Laduma. They've got some fascinating insight into how we as South Africans bank and decide which banking products we want to make use of. He's joining me in studio to speak a little bit more about that. Piet, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for having us.
Now, I think the research that you guys have done is absolutely fascinating because really it shows that different age groups of South Africans are interacting with their banking or their financial services quite differently.
Yeah, so I think initially what we wanted to do is everybody talks about LSM and LSM and LSM, but the truth is in townships it doesn't matter. The trends fluctuate so much that, even though the LSM questionnaire was set up, or living standards measure, used to classify consumers in South Africa, it was set up way back and it definitely serves a purpose, but we are of the opinion that, as I say, in townships, it's just not as relevant. So for instance, I always use the example, I could own a kettle. That's one of the questions, and that pushes me onto the LSM 6 band. Now my kettle breaks, you ask me in 3 months, I don't have the question kettle anymore, I'm in the LSM 5 band, and suddenly you don't see me as a consumer. Truth is, everybody can be a consumer, especially here. I think we're talking about aspirational individuals who, if they want your product, they'll try and get your product. So we've rather coined a phrase, I think, that we'd like to use, the Ubuntu millennials, where you have these 18 to 34 group of people who still value the traditional ways of doing it and the traditional community values, but they also are tech savvy and they want to keep up with their peers globally. So it's actually a very stressful place to be in because you're having pressure from both sides. So what we did then in our study is to rather use age group segmentation in order to see if there are differences in trends, which we found.
Now, is this research area specific? Are we talking about national voices being represented here? How did you go about doing this?
Yes, so we've created a platform where we do research and people are able to go via their mobile phones or online and complete the survey. So this was a completely voluntary research with a natural fallout, which represented our audience, which I think by definition represents the black market in South Africa. Sure, it was still predominantly male, but I do think the trends, are extrapolable. You can extrapolate the trends. Yeah.
Now, I want us to start at the bottom because I know we really want to focus on the 18 to 34.
Sure.
But let's start with the 35 to the 49-year-old banker.
Yes.
What did you discover about him or her?
Well, I think, so what we found that was expected would be that you'd have more than one bank account. You're starting, you have a check account and not just a savings account. So predominantly savings accounts among our consumers, but the older consumers tending to have a check account, more than one bank account, as I said. But I think what also surprised us was how they chose their bank. So they say they chose because they saw it everywhere they went, but second was actually falling back to family and friends and not necessarily even the rewards programs. So I think it might also be an age group where the rewards programs, they're already at the bank for so many years. We also see that people are generally happy with their banks. But unfortunately what is happening in this age group, they are the provider group, so they have much more credit related facilities like short-term loans, car finance, credit cards, etc. I wouldn't call it disconcerting, but for me the heavy reliance on short-term loans does not bode too great a picture for the specific consumer. Because it means I need to buy my bread and clothes and DIY, anything that needs to happen, I need a short-term loan for. So I effectively need credit to live from day to day. And I think that's an unfortunate thing we found.
Right. I mean, if we have a look at some of the statistics, we've got 50% of the respondents say, I try to live on cash, but I live on credit to provide for my family. And I think this is certainly something that, national government is aware of, and we see them trying to implement savings, tax-free savings incentives to encourage South Africans to save money. And I think from this research we can see that I'm certainly not seeing a priority on saving, rather just going on month to month.
Absolutely. I think saving, even though you'd like to, it has to go to the back of your mind. Because you need to provide what's happening now. Your kids need to go to school. We did a further online poll quickly after this study to understand what the people use short-term loans for. And it's literally, as I mentioned, anything from education, paying for school fees, doing DIY, grocery shopping, etc. So it's literally to keep the clothes on their backs.
And also, as you mentioned, important to note at this point that the 35 to 49-year-old age group really is the provider.
Yes.
So those responsibilities, of course, go hand in hand with that area of life, presumably.
Exactly, and we'll see as we move down to the younger Ubuntu millennial group, but the provider is also stretched both ways, because they probably have an older parent living with them, the way the township household is structured, but they also have the younger kids. So you're finding that people just don't have money for themselves, if I can call it like that, a worst case scenario.
Yeah.
They're getting by, but it is a lot of pressure.